Welcome back to They Reminisce Over You. I'm Christina.
And I'm Miguel. On this episode, we're talking about one of my favorite rappers of all time, Mr. Big Stuff, Heavster, Overweight Lover, out of Moneyearnin, chunky but funky. He's from Moneyearnin Mount Vernon, diddly 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 D, Heavy D. One of the few people, I think there's maybe two or three, who have done a song with both Michael and Janet Jackson.
True.
He's the man who's basically responsible for Uptown Records, with him being the first act, and he helped find Jodeci, Monifah, Soul for Real, and was instrumental in Mary J. Blige's career as well. So let's just get right into it. We're talking about Heavy D this week, the late great Heavy D. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first time, or it probably isn't the first time, but one of the first times I heard him was pretty much the same way I heard all of my early hip hop, riding the school bus and the radio being tuned to 1580 K-Day and hearing either Mr. Big Stuff or Chunky But Funky, one of those early records. And I was like, yeah, this guy's dope. I like this. I hadn't seen him, didn't know who him and the Boyz were at the time. So it was just another record that I thought was jamming.
I think what's really good about his music is it's always catchy.
Yeah.
Whether it's like the sample or just like a hook, it always makes you want to dance.
Yeah. And that's what probably the first song I heard was doing for me. Like I said, it was probably Mr. Big Stuff. And yeah, just that little sample. Who do you think you are? And just make you want to bounce a little bit. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, so that was my first introduction to Heavy D. And after hearing a couple singles, of course, I had to save up some cash to buy the cassette because that's what we did in those days.
Or a blank cassette and try to record it off the radio.
Well, see, that was my first step, was to record it on the radio. And then when it was like, it's time for me to go ahead and get the full album.
You got to make that next step.
Yeah, I had to do some chores around the house and earn some cash, pay my $8 or whatever it was at the time to go and get that first album.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm pretty sure the first song I heard from him was probably from the second album.
Okay.
I think it was Somebody for Me might have been the first one. Like, I know some of the songs from the first album, the Overweight Lovers in the House, but I feel like I didn't really hear of him until 89. Because, those years are a little fuzzy for me.
Right.
But pretty sure Somebody for Me was the first one.
Okay. The thing that I really liked about Heavy D and the Boyz, obviously, because this is still a time where we're coming out of like the early days of hip hop where everybody had their matching outfits and they had a style. So every time you saw them, they were all dressed exactly alike, except his would be in a different color. So if they had on Nike sweatsuits, they would be wearing white ones. He'd have a red one or the opposite. And for a big dude, he was always able to move. He
was very nimble on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And mind you, this is also when you were dancing in hard bottoms and suits.
Right. So he was always able to not only look good, he was moving really well. And a small underrated element of his style, I will say this, and I always liked it, is no matter what glasses he was wearing, they always had a gradient where it faded from dark to light as it got lower.
Yeah.
And I always really liked that.
See, now that you mention it, I can see it in my head, but I can't say I consciously noticed that.
No, that was something that I always noticed, that he had a dark to light gradient in all of his glasses. And I just thought that was very entertaining.
Yeah, I just think that he really drilled it into our heads when he came out with the Overweight Lover angle, shall we say.
Well, because everybody back in those days had a gimmick.
Yeah, you had to have a thing.
Yeah.
And that was his. He was like, well, you could see it, so I might as well make it my thing.
Exactly.
But I'm going to make it sexy.
Yeah, because I'm the overweight lover. I might be big, but the ladies still love me. Because you had the fat boys, you had the skinny boys.
The skinny boys?
Yes.
I don't know the skinny boys.
There was a group called the Skinny Boys. You had the college boys.
A lot of boys.
It was a lot of boys. And he had the boys too.
Yeah.
His producer / DJ Eddie F. And dancers Trouble T-Roy and G-Wiz. They made up the boys.
Yeah.
But yeah, his style and image was a lot more positive than like, say, the Fat Boys, because they were making fun of them just being fat all the time and talking about how sloppy they could be and blah, blah, blah. But he was like, no, I'm getting suited and booted. I'm going to be the flyest dude in the room.
Your girl.
Yeah. I'm going to be the flyest dude in the room, and I'm leaving with your lady.
Yeah, because you had sent me a link to a documentary, and I can't remember who it was who said it, but it was like one of his friends, one of these music folks, was just talking about the whole overweight lover persona, and he was like, no, but like I actually believed it. I was like, maybe I should keep an eye on my girl.
I can see it.
He made it believable.
I can see it. Well, you see what Queen Latifah said in that same documentary about when he guest starred on In Living Color.
Living Single.
Yes, Living Single. And how Kim Fields was just like, the entire time that he was there.
Yeah, because the storyline was he kind of friended her. I think they showed like a little clip and he was just kind of like, we can be friends, right? And she was just like, yeah, I guess. And then Queen Latifah's character, Khadijah, came down and she was like, I had to break up with him and he was so sad.
Yeah.
And then they cut to Kim Fields' interview and she was like, I'm sad our story arc didn't last a little longer. And then you got Queen Latifah's like, I think she had a little crush on him. For real, for real.
So I'm sure he had that effect on all the ladies.
Yeah.
Because like I said, that's what he presented himself as. Like,
yeah, big teddy bear.
I'm the overweight lover.
Yeah.
But in terms of his music, he really touched on pretty much everything. Like, of course, he started with just your regular straight up hip hop, but all of his albums had elements of house and dance and reggae in the music. And I mentioned this when we were talking about Queen Latifah. Her and Heavy D have similar career paths.
Yeah.
And both of them have similar styles as well. They're like two sides of the same coin, pretty much.
A little bit of house, a little bit of Jamaican influence, a little New Jack swing.
Right.
And even like their rhyme style sometimes can sound pretty similar because that kind of hit me. I think I said in that episode when I was listening to Queen Latifah or Heavy D, one of the two, and I was just like, do they sound like each other? Am I crazy?
No, it's definitely there.
Because I can't remember which song. I'm pretty sure it's from the first album, but I'm like, this would fit if Queen Latifah said, give me body over this.
So yeah, they were both very similar. And that's what really opened him up to a wide audience. He touched everybody in a way that people who get exposed like that usually get called corny or sellouts and whatnot. Like grandmothers knew who Heavy D was. Yeah. But it didn't seem like corny at all.
Right. And it wasn't going to keep the quote unquote hardcore dudes from listening to his music either.
Like everybody listened to Heavy D.
The Naughty by Nature guys were good friends of his too.
Yeah.
We always joke about Naughty by Nature. Their persona looks hard, but they love a good party song.
Right. So a lot of people who were doing pop leaning music would always get accused of being soft and sellouts and corny. And that never happened with Heavy D and his albums. Yeah.
How do you think he managed to do that? Is it just his authenticity?
Yeah, it just seems like very authentic. It doesn't seem like it's a pop dude trying to do hip hop.
Right.
Or a hip hop dude trying to do pop. It was just who he was.
Yeah. I mean, because he even enlisted all of his rapper friends to do that no cursing song with him.
Don't curse.
Or don't curse, And it wasn't like, this is dumb.
Right.
Everybody got on board and did it.
Like he's doing records with Big Daddy Kane and Cool G Rap on them.
Yeah.
But he could also turn around and do Is It Good to You and dancing all over the place. So very few people involved in hip hop have been able to capture that so easily.
And I guess, like I just said, authentically.
Yeah.
Back to that documentary, that's pretty much what everyone was saying. Was he was one of the few artists that I could put on in the car with my parents or my grandma. But everybody was saying it like it was a good thing.
Yeah.
And this is not something that is normally said as a good thing.
Right. Like you could play it in the car for your grandmother and then when she gets out, skip ahead a couple songs and you playing something for somebody on the block.
Yeah.
He was able to balance that really well.
Oh, and another thing, I didn't realize that Pete Rock was his cousin, who Pete Rock was just starting out at that time. So I'm sure that helped his career as well.
Yeah.
Just working with Heavy D. But yeah, I didn't realize they were cousins.
Yeah, he said that Heavy D was actually the one who got him into production and was teaching him how to use drum machines and whatnot. He's on some of the early albums as well. He's got one or two songs on every album up until like Nuttin But Love.
Yeah.
Basically all of the stuff with the Boyz, I believe Pete Rock did some production on.
Okay.
But after that is when he did most of his solo stuff and that wasn't his boom bap-ish. So I guess Peter wasn't needed anymore.
Yeah.
But with that said, let's talk about some of the albums and songs.
Let's start with, I guess, the first album, then. Living Large,
Yes.
Of course, 1987.
Which was, like I said, the first album that I heard. I can't pinpoint exactly which song it was, but it was probably, I'm going to say Moneyearnin Mount Vernon or Mr. Big Stuff. It's got to be one of those two.
What about the Overweight Lovers in the House?
Yeah, that was another jam.
I feel like this album aged pretty well for me because, as I've said many, many times, I kind of started listening to R&B and hip hop a little more specifically, I guess, like 89 on. So anything before that usually feels a little too old for me.
Yeah.
So this one for me, I was like, okay, this stuff that I can still listen to and it doesn't feel like, that was before my time, so whatever. And you got Albie Sure crooning all over it.
Singing his heart out.
The unofficial Fourth Boys.
Yes.
Yeah, so these songs sound familiar, but I'm pretty sure I heard them later.
I think it has to do with the fact that it was Teddy Riley and Marley Marl, because they're like the cream of the crop when it comes to producers.
And since I like New Jack Swing, this is early New Jack Swing.
Yeah, this is right when Teddy started making that transition into New Jack Swing.
So that's why it sounds like something I would have been listening to in 89.
Yeah. Like if this album was produced by a lesser known producer or not as talented, it probably wouldn't hold up, just like a lot of other stuff that we know and love from this era that just is like, I don't know if I want to hear this again. But because you got two heavyweights like Marley Marl and Teddy Riley involved, and Eddie F did a lot of production as well, it holds up.
And I think Heavy D's flow isn't as rhythmic as early rap, so it doesn't sound like the first generation of rap.
Yeah, he's
the
not
next
1, 2, 3 to the 4.
Yeah. Don't push me.
Yeah, he was quite nimble when it came to his rapping and his ability.
And he has a pleasant voice too. Yeah. So he's easy to listen to.
Yes.
Basically what you're saying, he's got a little something for everybody. So he's got like the little reggae vibes. He's got Albie Sure crooning R&B hooks. He's got like little dance tracks. So everybody can get in on it.
And the next album, Big Time, it was similar to the first, but much better.
Yeah.
It's like everybody had gotten better at what they do in terms of Eddie F and Marley Marl and Pete Rock and Teddy Riley. Like they had stepped it up a notch.
Yeah.
So the production on this is really good too. And it's got some of my favorite Heavy D songs on it.
Like?
More Bounce.
Of course.
Basically,
you would like that sample.
Yeah. The run from Girls They Love Me to Big Time.
Right.
Those three. Ugh. Chef's kiss. But the biggest songs from this album were We Got Our Own Thing, which was very danceable and up tempo, and Somebody For Me with more Albie Sure crooning on the hook.
Oh yeah, I forgot about We Got Our Own Thing. So either it was Somebody For Me or We Got Our Own Thing.
Okay.
Well, it was one of those two. That was my intro to Heavy D.
And in between this album and their following album, T-Roy died tragically while they were on tour.
Yeah.
He fell off of something backstage, and I don't know how far it was, but it was quite a fall, and he passed away in the middle of their tour.
Read somewhere that it was like a height of like 2 stories.
Oh, man.
So it was a fall.
Yeah. And so they dedicated the third album, Peaceful Journey, to Trouble T-Roy. This was another album that had hits all over it. So Is It Good to You, Now That We Found Love.
We got a little Casey and JoJo singing some hooks too.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that. It was very danceable again.
Yeah.
But it also had some boom bap hip hop on it with, like you said, Don't Curse. Like you got Grand Poobah, Cool G Rap, and Q-Tip on this album. They wouldn't be doing records with somebody like who's soft or a sellout.
Right.
If they didn't actually think he was legit.
Yeah.
So I like this album as well. I don't like it as much as the first two, but I do like it.
The first 2 albums, I got used to hearing Albie Sure crooning all over it.
Yeah.
And then this one, we got Now That We Found Love with Aaron Hall shouting all over it, which is completely different than Albie Sure's sound, even though I love that song too. I think that song was probably the one that like solidified it for me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, he's like part of my roster. But you got Aaron Hall just shouting all over it. The smooth sounds of Albie Sure was not on this album at all, right?
No, he wasn't on this one. I think the last one he was on was Big Time.
Okay. But definitely Is It Good to You is like, I love the hooks. Like Tammy Lucas is like a great hook singer. She's got like a perfect voice to balance these hip hop songs.
Yeah.
So that one's definitely a favorite.
Yes, because, and we've been talking about this for a while, doing an episode about the unsung hook singers of the 90s and early 2000s.
Because Tammy Lucas was taken off of 2 songs, right?
Yes.
When they did like video versions.
Mm-hmm.
But she did release Is It Good to You by herself as a single.
So she did get a little bit of a reprieve.
Right.
And I think I have that too. I'm sure I have it somewhere.
I have it somewhere.
Oh, Tammy Lucas. Yeah, we need to do that episode. Tammy Lucas.
And other...
Vinia Mojica.
And other notable hook singers.
Yes.
What was her name? The one on Bone Thugs singing her heart out. It's the thuggish, ruggish bone. Tasha.
Yes. Anyway, let's get back.
Look out for that at some point.
Yes.
Back to Heavy D.
So the follow-up album, Blue Funk, is probably my favorite Heavy D album.
Yes.
Because while it has the same elements of the previous albums, it's a little bit harder than the rest of them production-wise, because this is a time when like New Jack Swing is kind of fading out, and
this new wave is about to come in.
So I really like this album. A lot of people don't, just because of it not having like a danceable hit, but it's similar to all of his previous albums, just minus that 1 or 2 dance songs on it. And if I had Pete Rock as my cousin,
why not?
And I have access to DJ Premier, I'm doing it too. So this is one of my favorite albums from front to back. I like the little interludes where he's giving an interview and talking about his life and whatnot in between the songs. I like the way that sequenced the album. And
and the like proper use of interludes and not like weird little sex skits.
Yeah. It's just him talking to an interviewer, and it ties into the song that's about to come up or the song that just ended. So it made sense.
Yeah. I will say I was kind of thrown off of it when I heard him say the N-word. I was like, oh, you use these words? I was like, I don't think he did on the previous albums.
Hey, he did Don't Curse.
He did.
And he really wasn't into cursing a lot, but I guess hearing this and having the same reaction as you did, people were like,
Heavy D's gone hard.
Yes. Even though the content is exactly the same, minus 1 or 2 songs where he's talking about like his brother getting shot. He's still doing, I'm a great rapper, women love me, and I can dance. But the production was different.
Definitely. Well, yeah, so this was 1993, so it had that 1993 feel. Yeah. A lot of people were transitioning to this sound who had been there before 93.
And like I said, if I had access to Premier and Pete Rock, my album would have sounded like this too. So I don't blame him for that. And like I said, it's probably my favorite Heavy D album.
Yeah, I think it's different reflecting back now because we're sort of just listening to everything all at once. And I'm trying to remember, you know, how I felt at the time when you have to wait like a year or 2 in between.
Yeah.
Because right now, everything kind of it makes sense why things sound the way they are. Because the last album was 91 and now this one's 93. And like you were saying, if his cousin is like Pete Rock, like why not use it?
Exactly.
But I guess I can understand why fans would be like, huh? This is a different sound. Especially because it'd been a couple years since the other album.
Yeah. And that brings us to the following year, where I guess he said, you know what, maybe I went a little too far left with that one.
Because this one is right back to more of what you would have expected.
Yeah, like let me give the people what they expect, even though the production and the producers are the same.
Right.
The only difference is there's 1 or 2 songs that you can dance to and have that little Heavy D, I love you, girl. I'm going to take your lady, Mr. Man, over there.
I think there's more than 1 or 2 songs you can dance to.
Yeah, well, I mean, like dance, though. Like getting sweaty dance. And most of it, like, Got Me Waiting is going to give you a little 2-step and whatnot.
Or mid-tempo.
And Black Coffee, you're going to 2-step to
it.
But I like this album, too.
I think this one is actually my favorite album.
Okay.
Like overall as an album, like I love Is It Good to You? But this album as a full project, I like the best.
Okay.
Well, it's funny with this whole Overweight Lover thing, just looking back, it's like, okay, he's not a small dude, but he's also quite tall.
Yeah.
And he's not
the weight was spread
that
out.
big.
He talks about himself like he's fat bastard or something. It's like, no, you're a big guy.
Like, you're big overall.
Yeah. It's not like my 1,000-pound life where they got to cut you out of your house or something. But no, you were a big guy.
I think we had different views of what overweight meant back then too, as well.
Exactly.
And again, that didn't stop him from doing all that dancing.
It didn't.
Not at all.
It did not. As we saw in the that video you sent me for the live performance of the In Living Color theme song that he did, and the way he's spinning all over the place and hopping up onto the stage where Eddie F was.
In a suit. Again, remember, in a suit and hard bottoms. Oh my gosh. So when I was watching the video, I was watching something else and I just saw that in the related content. And I just see Heavy D performing on In Living Color. I completely forgot that he did the song. So I'm like, oh, let me check out this performance. Because I just thought it was one of, a musical performance that they would have occasionally. And then the video starts with the theme, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, duh. He did the theme.
Yes, you heard him every week and didn't even realize it was him.
No, I realized it. I just forgot because I was expecting a performance.
Right.
Thought he was going to come out and do, I don't know, Got Me Waiting or something. And then I'm like, oh, duh.
Yeah, so those were the albums that he did with the Boyz, Eddie F and G-Wiz for half and T-Roy for the first two. Then we get to the solo era of his career where the Boyz were no longer necessary. I wouldn't say necessary, but we got to a point where DJs and background dancers just weren't being used anymore.
Yeah. Did they have like a fallout, or it was
not
just
that
like,
I'm aware of,
just going solo?
Yeah, it's like I said, you just don't have background dancers anymore. And I know that Eddie F was starting to do a lot more outside production at this time too. So
it was just a natural career move.
Yeah, and you really don't have DJs anymore, so there's no need for him to be in the back DJing when that's being phased out at this time as well. So solo Hev is on the scene now.
Yeah, the solo stuff, I just dropped off from there.
Yeah, I think it was because there was like a 4-year gap between the Nothing But Love album and what was it, Waterbed Hev. And I liked a couple songs on it, but this was also around the time when I just stopped buying albums too because of the internet. And we could get stuff for free and downloading viruses onto our computers. So this was like in the middle of that. So if there was a song that I liked, I would just download it.
I was still buying stuff around this time, but I think, again, 97, 98 is now we're getting another wave. And I think maybe I was just into that stuff. Like I was listening to, I don't know, like DMX. And who else was in like Biggie? And I don't know. I think he was just not on my radar anymore.
Right. So, yeah. Like I said, I would download a couple of songs here and there, but didn't buy an album.
Yeah. Because when I listened to the album, like it sounds like a very 1997, 98 album. So it sounds like something I would have listened to, but it just, I don't know. I'm not sure what happened, but it just wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, I know exactly what happened. That's when I was stealing music. That's exactly what it was.
Nope, I was still buying CDs.
Well, I would still buy some.
Yeah.
But I was also beefing them too.
Right.
It was a little bit of both. And his later stuff just fell victim to that, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I would say for me, for sure, after like the 2000 and on, that was kind of where things started to get sketchy in terms of what I would actually buy.
Yeah.
And once we get past like, I think maybe even about like 2005, because then we were starting to like, it was so much easier to like rip your CDs and stuff. So I would kind of just listen to stuff I already had, or just stop buying and stop looking for new stuff.
Yeah. But like I said, there were a couple songs on this album that I liked. I liked the one with the Dog Pound. There's another one that I liked. Who was on it? Lost Boys. And single was Big Daddy. So I'm sure you know that one.
Yes. That one I actually forgot about until I listened to it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I know this song. So he wasn't completely off my radar.
Right.
I just hadn't thought about it in a long time.
Yeah, when we get to the following album in 99, Heavy, again, I really wasn't too onto this one, but there were a couple songs that I did like I love Listen with Q-Tip, and there's one with CeeLo that I liked. on point with Big Pun and 8 Ball. He got all the big dudes on the record with him.
And that's when you see that it's like he's not that big.
Yeah.
If you compare him to other big dudes.
Yeah, there are people much bigger than him.
Yeah, I watched the video and I was like, he's taller than both of them.
Yeah. So I like those records. But again, I didn't have the album because I was just taking music at this time.
This was the first time I listened to it. And overall, I like the album. What I thought was interesting is he had a bunch of different flows on the different songs.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this sounds crazy, but when I was listening to the way, the style, I was like, this sounds like DMX when he's not growling. So I pulled up How It's Going Down because that's one of the songs where he's not barking and growling and stuff, right? And I was like, no, I don't think I'm crazy. Like, this flow sounds similar. And there was the song I Know You Love Me. That reminded me of Foxy Brown's Hotspot.
Okay.
Like, it's the cadence or whatever. So I was just like, am I crazy? Or is it just like, you know how like The Game does this sometimes too, where he'll just like do a song in somebody else's rhyme style?
Right.
So I don't know if he was just like playing around with different styles. And then I don't think so. It kind of had a very like D'Angelo, Bilal, Prince sort of feel. So I found that a lot of the songs reminded me of somebody else.
Okay.
Like You Nasty Have kind of made me think of LL.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so a lot of the songs, I was like, hey, wait a minute, this sounds like somebody else.
Yeah, I didn't listen to this one yesterday. This is the only one that I didn't listen to because I had listened to it recently. So I figured I wasn't going to go back to it yesterday.
Well, I might pull up some of my reference tracks for you to
Yeah,
so you can see what I'm saying in terms of like, just like the cadence and the flow of some of the songs just made me think of other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was intentional or if he was just trying to hit different targets.
All right. So there was a big gap between that album and his next album, which was called Vibes. It was almost 10 years later. It came out in 2008 and there's no rapping on it.
Nope. It's a reggae album.
It's a straight up reggae album.
It threw me off. I was not expecting it because I mean, he's always done like a reggae song or a reggae style song, but I was like, oh, next song. Next song. I was like, oh, okay, so we're doing a reggae album.
Yeah, it's all reggae.
Well, it's aptly named Vibes.
Yes.
This feels very tropical vacation, pool party, summertime.
Exactly. I remember when it first came out, I saw on a couple websites that he was doing a reggae album. So I'm like, you know what? This might be up my alley. Let me go ahead and check this out.
Right.
And it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. Like for somebody who's not a reggae artist, it was cool. It wasn't like Snoop Lion or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't that.
I think for me, it was like, as I was saying, he'd always done like a couple songs here and there on all the other albums, but I think I just didn't want a whole album of it, if that makes any sense. But like you were saying, it wasn't bad. It wasn't like, ugh, I'll never listen to this again. But
right.
It's also, I'm not really rushing to put it on either, but like said, hey, next time we take a tropical vacation or something, maybe I'll put it on in the background.
Yeah, that Snoop Lion album, I never want to hear that again.
I don't even remember if I tried to listen to it. I probably did, but I put it out of my brain, I guess.
Oh, it's terrible. And I love Snoop.
Well, at least he's like, his parents are Jamaican, so he has a reference point.
Yeah, like I'm cool with Heavy D doing this. And like I said, it was done much better. It's just not something that I would listen to over and over again because I don't listen to much reggae anyway.
And I think I kept just hearing inflections of the non-reggae Heavy D, so I kept waiting for him to come out of his accent. So, not a bad stab at doing a reggae album, but it's not what I come to Heavy for.
Right. And his final album before he passed was 3 years after this called Love Opus. And I have never heard this album.
Me either. And even just like the cover, I was like, are we sure? Like, is this really heavy? Like, it was just, there was something that just felt like, I don't know, not him. Like, it's him, it's his voice, and we know it's his album, but it was so different from everything.
Yeah. So I had never heard this album until, a couple days ago. And it was interesting.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was just kind of there, but there's so much goodwill that's been built up from his career starting in 1987 through this. I'll let this one go. Like, this isn't one that I probably will listen to again, but it was cool.
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like a new artist coming out in this digital age, trying to make whatever style music that was popular at that time. And I think that's what threw me off, because I was like, okay, it's one thing to try different styles. I was like, this feels completely different. Like, if it wasn't for the sound of his actual voice, I wouldn't have believed that was a Heavy D album.
Yeah, so it's cool. I personally probably won't listen to it again. But like I said, there's been so much goodwill built up before this. I'll let one dud jump into the discography. Right.
I don't even know if I'd call it a dud. I would just call it an experiment.
Yeah, that's better. That's a better term.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone through the discography, what are your favorite songs? And do you have like one favorite as well?
My favorite songs that I picked are all the ones with the hooks.
Okay.
So it was Is It Good to You, Nuttin But Love, and Got Me Waiting. So all the ones with the unsung hook singers. Yeah. And I think I made it clear, Is It Good to You is the all-time favorite.
So for me, my favorite songs are like the Overweight Lovers in the House, Moneyearnin Mount Vernon, More Bounce, all the songs that have samples.
Right. I loved all those songs too, because I was just listening to all of it in like 2-3 days. They know how to pick samples.
Yes.
A note that I had for almost every album was catchy samples.
So I love all of those, but my favorite one is DJ Premier producing Yes Y'all, because like I was telling you a while back, it used to be an interlude on a Gang Starr album called 92 Interlude, where it's just the loop playing over and over again. And the story goes that he begged Premier to make this record for him. And he's like, nope, can't do it. Not doing it. I only want it to remain an interlude on this album. Right. I don't repeat beats. And he said he just kept wearing him down in that Heavy D fashion. He was like, you know, I can't say no to you. So he took it, added some drums to it, put some scratches in on it with Heavy D's vocals, and it came out like Heavy D and Premier. Yes, y'all. That's my favorite one from Heavy D, which is surprising because it's like a 180 from pretty much all of his other content that everybody loves. Right. Like all the songs you mentioned, Now That We Found Love, all of that. It's very slow and boom bap-ish, and I like it.
There you go.
That is my favorite.
Oh, another little tidbit that I saw on one of the articles you sent me, that We Got Our Own Thing was initially a song for Wreckx-n-Effect.
I can see it.
See, I guess now that I only know it as a Heavy D song, I can't see it. I
can see it. Only because I can remember like early Wreckx-n-Effect songs. Yeah. Other than Rump Shaker. Yeah. So I can see them doing that record.
I just feel like it's such a Heavy D and the Boyz song now that I'm like, Wreckx-n-Effect? Really?
Yeah, I can see it. So what was the thing that you liked about Heavy D? His music, him personally, his acting, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think he was just easy. His music was just easy. Like, you wanted to dance, you wanted to sing, you wanted to hang out. Like, it just, the music was just easy. I don't know how else to describe it. It sounds nice. He seems like a fun person. Like, you just like it. And also, as I'm pretty sure I've said before too, since, you know, this is all like early 90s, like I just thought that rap was supposed to have all these different styles. So I wasn't like, oh, he's too soft or he's too danceable, whatever. Or he's like the nice in between, like the hard rap and the conscious rap. I didn't even think about all that. It was just like, he's fun. That's it. Sometimes it's just that simple.
Yeah. I liked the fact that he was, and we mentioned this at the very beginning, he was able to reach all types of people without compromising who he was. And the way he was able to flow in and out of different genres of music. Yeah. Like he would do an R&B type song or then a dance song and then some real boom bap stuff with Pete Rock and Premier. And then I'm back over here doing Is It Good to You with Tammy Lucas on the hook. Yeah. So the way he was able to just bounce in and out of different styles and genres like that, and it wasn't looked at as like compromising his art. That's what I liked about it.
That's quite a feat. Yeah. Again, now looking back at everything as a whole, it's like, how did he manage to do that?
Right. Because we see and have seen a lot of people try to do this and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. It feels inauthentic.
Yeah.
Or that you're riding a wave.
Right. And he was able to just bounce in and out of this kind of stuff all the time.
Because we even see some artists from that era too, who weren't able to transition as seamlessly from the late 80s, early 90s into the mid to later 90s as well. So even at the time, not only just looking in hindsight, at the time, there were people who weren't able to do it.
Yeah. So with that said, would you like to give the people a Heavy D recommendation?
I would just recommend watching his documentary, Be Inspired, because then it just gives you a full picture of who he was, not only just like his musical career, but just who he was as a person, how much he helped other people, and how other artists are just tied to him, his career as well, and just kind of gives you a full picture of Heavy D.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to go in the complete opposite direction and suggest that people check out some of his acting work.
I had a note about that where I was like, oh, I didn't even like go into like review any of the acting stuff.
Yeah, he's done or did quite a lot of acting. I never saw the play, but I remember when he was first doing a play on Broadway called Riff Raff and was getting all sorts of acclaim for it. And I'm like, Heavy D's on Broadway? So you can just add that into all the things that he was good at and able to bounce around and do. So I would suggest checking out some of his acting stuff. Like we mentioned, the Living Single run that he had. He was in the movie Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy. He was in the Cider House Rules of all movies. So he had quite the full filmography as well. So I would suggest go check some of that out. And the Blue Funk album.
Your favorite one.
Yes.
Of his discography.
So the two of those. Those are going to be my recommendations.
Okay.
All right. You got anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
I think that's all I got. I was going to say something about the documentary, but just go watch it. There's some good stories in there from his friends and colleagues.
There is. There's all sorts of people. Mary J. Blige, Will Smith.
I was going to retell
Monifah.
A story, but it's better for you to just go watch it.
Yeah, just go check it out.
Tell the story themselves.
Exactly. So thank you for listening to us reminisce on the life and career of Heavy Diddly 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 D.
You can't say it as fast as him.
I cannot. Not many people can. But thanks for coming back and listening. We try to do this every 2 weeks or so. So if you haven't listened to us in a while, come back in 2 weeks. We'll have something new for you. We also have a newsletter called Liner Notes. It's a free monthly newsletter. So if you want to sign up for that, go to troypodcast.com/newsletter and it will pop up in your inbox in the first week of the month. If you would like to buy some merch, you can go to our store, Nothing But a T-Thing. We have t-shirts, hats, hoodies, all sorts of accessories.
We got Troy themed stuff, but we also just have like pop culture themed stuff. So check it out.
So go ahead and check that out. That's at tthang.com. TEETHANG.com. We will be putting together a Heavy D playlist for this episode with our favorite Heavy D songs, so make sure to check that out. It'll be on the website, or you can go to our Spotify page as well. You'll find all of that in the show notes. I can't think of anything else to say. So
that's it.
I think we should wrap up here because the AC has just turned on and I don't want to edit that out. So we will be talking to you guys again in a couple of weeks. Bye.